Hi, my name is Kunal, and welcome to the Geeks of the Valley podcast, which connects with some of the brightest minds globally who are leading their respective industries today to discuss the hottest upcoming industry trends and how their work is affecting the global economy. This morning, from the San Francisco Bay Area, we have a very special guest joining us, the founder and CEO of Kuleana, aka the Beyond Meat of sushi. Please welcome Jacek Prus. Jacek, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Kunal, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about everything.
And how are things with you in light of COVID?
Um, it's strange sitting in home in San Francisco right now. There's a orange blanket on the city, but life goes on. We just finished YC, so yeah, excited to keep moving forward with things.
I'm happy to hear that, and hopefully that funding round went well for you guys. Let's jump into the first question here, shall we?
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself and your background and how it led you to founding Kuleana.
Yeah, so story for me started a while back. It was 6 years ago. Actually, I used to when I was back in college, I was taking an animal ethics course, and I saw two really powerful documentaries. One was called Earthlings. You see the inside of factory farms, um, and then another was called Cowspiracy, which kind of sheds light on a lot of the environmental effects um, of animal agriculture. And I think the meta fact that land use, water use, food use, deforestation, ocean dead zones, and species extinction are all actually led primarily by animal agriculture. That kind of blew my mind. So all of these things motivated me to get animals out of the food system. I first approached doing this by trying to convince people through, educating them either through these documentaries or conversations. And at the time, I was running an animal rights group at the University of Texas, and in collaboration with PETA, they had a campus rep program. We actually did some pretty cool work, and the University of Texas adopted some more vegan meals and products into their dining halls, which was pretty exciting for us. And then I, flew to LA to visit PETA, and actually went to an animal rights conference at the time. It was back in 2016, and saw a really good combination of talks. And two that I remembered the most were by Tobias Leonhardt from ProVeg and Bruce Friedrich from the Good Food Institute, and both of them talked about how um, it would be really technology that helped animals more than anything. And they gave some pretty good examples about um, when you use we no longer used whale oil after we found kerosene, and there's just tons of these examples throughout history. Anyways, when they kind of gave this talk, it really changed the way I would approach um, this idea to get animals out of the food system by, instead of appealing to ethics, it's more about giving people the alternative. So that changed, that changed my approach. I went to then get an MBA in entrepreneurship so I could learn more fundamentals of business. By that point, the seed had been planted to kind of start a company in the space. I always had a lot of interest in entrepreneurship, but never really found the right um, you know uh, industry or cause around which to start a company. And I think my passion for animal rights just kind of manifested that way. And after my MBA, I went to go join an organization called ProVeg. It's a food awareness organization that's has a pretty big presence in Europe. And there I got to have the fortune of helping to build the ProVeg Incubator, which was just an incredible experience. It was we were really early on building an incubator for plant-based, cell-based, or recombinant protein, any kind of company that's essentially getting animals out of the food system. So long story short, all these things kind of helped just germinate this idea of starting a company in the space. And After the experience in the incubator, I just saw a white space in seafood, and also, thought this would be the right time to move in on such an opportunity.
And Jacek, what does Kuleana mean? Anything special about why you picked this name specifically?
Yeah, Kuleana, it roughly translates to responsibility. It comes from Hawaii. Um, we just thought the name represented a lot of what we were aiming to do in the company, and that's create a more responsible food system. And also Hawaii has a great culture around seafood, and it kind of fit in well with our concept as we're doing raw seafood and raw tuna specifically. Um, yeah, it's it's kind of the story around that one.
As you alluded to in the first question, you became interested in the food industry after taking an animal ethics class at the University of Texas, Austin, right? And then you flew to Europe where you founded and set up the ProVeg Incubator, based and focused around plant-based foods. And this kind of pushes into this question of what is so important about animal ethics today and the way agriculture is done in the food industry.
Yeah, so I mean, I think first of all, when anybody sees the inside of a factory farm, they wince at the least. Um, I think deep down, all of us know that factory farming is wrong. Um, and I think in 50 and 100 years, people will look back and will see it as a moral atrocity. Unfortunately, right now, it's really difficult to be vegan, because they're just finding the alternatives for most people is too much of a challenge, or requires a lot of extra effort. um, so that's kind of the mission between the alternative space there is to give people something easier to make it easier for them to live by their values. And besides the appeal right there, the ethical point, I, I just think it's also incredibly important on the environmental front. I know I mentioned it earlier, um, but a generation now is more environmentally conscious than ever, and people want to live by what they believe in, and getting animals off plates is one of the best ways to do that. Um, and when we choose eating plants over an animal, just scientifically, it's just much more efficient, right? Animals are much higher up the food chain. We spend tons of resources feeding them and giving them water and sheltering them, and cleaning up their poop. Like it's inevitably just much more of a sustainable system to eat plants. And it's not a new message. I mean, there's books. I think it's called How to Eat to Save the World. And that's a pretty old book, and even there they talk about the same idea. So um, it's just a way for people to live more environmentally, especially now. We need it more and more as our population is blowing up.
And what is Kuleana trying to change? Where do you envision it to be in the next 5 years?
Sure. So at Kuleana, we're kind of doing two things. And one end, we're creating raw seafood products, and our first and biggest focus is raw tuna. Um, we're really inspired by Impossible Foods and them making high quality products. Um, we think that making a really good product is a much better strategy than making a lot of products. So we're very focused on this, on creating just phenomenal raw tuna. I think we have something quite good already. We'll be beta launching it this year here in San Francisco, um, and with some restaurant partners. But besides this, there's another product we'll look at too. It's raw salmon. Our current process translates relatively well to this kind of product. It also moves through the same supply chains. So on one end, what we're doing is creating these seafood alternative products. But another end, and it's really tied to also our product development, is we're fundamentally looking to improve the texturization processes of meat analogs. And this is a longer term part of our company. We're looking at mechanical methods and biotech methods that can help do this. Either it be a novel format of using certain machines or certain processes, to utilizing enzymes, and creating texture that way, or even a combination of both. So that's another aspect of the company that we're always focusing on it, and it's tied to our product end because raw tuna is a pretty difficult product to make. The plant-based meat industry has been blowing up, and mostly the segments that have gotten really big have been around hamburgers and sausages, more of a ground meat kind of texture. And I think the big challenge now, and you could say in some way almost like a holy grail of meat analogs, is finding products that have the texture of unprocessed formats of meat. And that's what we aim to do with the company. And when we develop that, our kind of strategy is to share that with the rest of the industry. More in not just openly sharing the process, but doing it more in a licensing format, and having some kind of business model around it. But in the end, we think that's just really exciting, from a personal and impact level, because it improves our products, but improves other products in the space. And it allows us also to innovate. I mean, in the end, we really see our company as looking to innovate fundamentally on the science and processes that are used to make the current products. And rather than just being more of a marketing company or a branding company. Not to say that isn't important, and we need companies approaching it from both ends.
So, Jacek, being a meat analog based seafood solution, are seafood alternatives a neglected industry today?
Yeah, I think seafood hasn't been targeted as much as terrestrial animals. That's for sure. We saw the Good Food Institute write some cool papers on this, and there was a lot of kind of trends pointing to that, especially late last year. And yeah, I think the seafood alternative industry is just it's really getting up on its feet. It's we definitely have some cool players across the space. I think we still have yet to see a big company kind of have a breakthrough moment, like Beyond Meat has had, or even Impossible Foods is having. But there's some pretty cool companies and good ideas being developed. And I think we just need more people kind of coming in and taking their stab at a company in the space.
Yeah, yes, and one of the things I've learned about this industry in general is that a lot of companies are they're competing. They've gotten the taste of the meat down, they've gotten the look of the meat down, but the texturizing of the meat and the feeling that it has in your mouth when you eat it, um, is something that everyone's competing to make better and better, with every iteration. And when it comes to this $13.7 billion plant-based market, other than this kind of bottleneck that other companies are facing, are there any other bottlenecks which you kind of find that you're facing in this industry specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you mentioned is a great one. Creating complex textures that is kind of the big key for the future of the products. But there's other things, like sometimes there's supply bottlenecks with certain ingredients. Other times it's production. Making enough product. You have Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat, who they have more demand than they can supply, right? And And I think that these companies are showing that, it's a scale up process. As they start scaling, the processes will, or the prices will drop for their products and make it more and more competitive. So, I think the food industry isn't as easily, changed as you could say an industry that's run through software, right? I mean, food is really complex and long. So I think, we got to get a bit more aggressive on building out the infrastructure for building and, creating enough products in the space. And that's something that we were always considering too with Kuleana. And fortunately, our process right now is, it's quite scalable, and we can make a lot of product relatively quick. And I think that's just something that every company kind of has to keep their eyes out for, is if it's just, if it's a great product but it can't really be scaled, well then it's exactly where it's going to be, is in the high end of the market, and I don't think it'll maximize the impact. So um, really getting the processes optimized is a big one. And as you had mentioned earlier, the texturization processes, those still have a bit of work to be done.
So when looking from the perspective of how the company tends to expand long term in regards to international markets, right? For example, when you look at Japan today, the average person in Japan consumes about 40.7 kgs to about 50 kgs of seafood a year. And, you know, globally, Japan consumes 68% of the world's, seafood. When looking at your international expansion long term, how do you guys plan on trying to tackle big markets like these?
Yeah. Well, I think, it's always, one foot in front of the other. We're really focused now on the United States, and it's quite a big market itself. And I think we saw that there was $10 billion worth of raw tuna imported into this market last year. So, we really just see it doing one step at a time, and doing it well. But as you mentioned, Japan is definitely on our radar. We're constantly talking to different stakeholders there, either be an investor or some operator. And we really want to get into that market. That being said, when you go into Japan, it's quite a bit of preparation. So we're building out our contacts there, and we'll definitely run marketing preemptively, and do lots of beta testing. And I think our product will, right now it's at version 1.0, but we want to have the product even, more exceptional by that moment, as the Japanese culture has some of the best seafood in the world. So it's something really really interesting to see how even other companies or products entered the market. And salmon is kind of this great example that it took quite a long time for salmon to enter the sushi scene. And I remember reading a paper, and it was individual from, I think, Norway, where they were farming tons of salmon. And at the time, the Norwegian consumption of salmon was actually dropping, so they needed to find a new sales outlet. And I don't remember the guy's name, but he spent, I think it was like 5 years over in Japan, just working with all these different people, until finally salmon moved its way into the sushi scene. And now it's just a mainstay there. So maybe the way it works is, it takes a while to get in, but once you have stakeholder buy-in, and especially like an authority figure buys in on your product, it can really grow, and be adopted quickly in that kind of market. So short story is, focusing on the United States for now, and specifically the West Coast, and then we'll move to Japan once the product is taken it to the next level and our processes have optimized.
So based on what you said, what are some of the meat solutions you guys are coming up with currently at Kuleana?
Yeah, so one of the easy uses for raw tuna that we're targeting is poke and poke bowls. That's one of the major targets that's interesting for us. It's really big here on the coast and usually represents people who are kind of care about either the environment or want a healthier option, which falls in line with our product. And also with in certain formats in the sushi cuisine, so specifically sushi rolls, spicy tuna, these kind of uses is so far when we worked with chefs, it fits our product really well. They're relatively large quantity purchases, which works well on growing quickly in a market level. And as we develop the product and get version 2.0 or 3.0 out there, we'll target other kind of uses like a nigiri and eventually even a sashimi. And that's not even mentioning how we want to use our upcoming products such as salmon. But besides this process, or this product development process, we're also looking at again developing technology that we can essentially license out to the rest of the industry, and I think that's another part of the company that we're pretty excited about, and it's also something we focus on very often.
Now I want to take a step back to talk about Y Combinator and life advice. As a recent Y Combinator, summer 2020 graduate, how has YC helped you build and cultivate the vision of Kuleana?
Yeah, YC was they were great. I think really YC has been getting more and more into the food and even the food biotech scene in the past couple of years, and what we really got a lot of benefit out of was working with our YC partners, Gustav and Eric. They were really helpful in just nailing down more and more work on our strategy, on helping us prioritize what to do essentially. I think that's a very difficult part of a company, is starting a company is you have so many options and choices of what to do, and having these kind of people on your side, who have started companies, who have worked at startups, who have seen hundreds of startups go through life cycles. It's just really quite priceless, because they have really good intuition, and their kind of heuristics are on point on helping you focus on what's necessary. So for example, we, early on when we were going into YC, we had this idea to just like let's scale like hell, let's sell really big contracts. And we realized it was actually kind of the wrong approach. The better thing to do was to take it a bit slower, to focus on product development, especially in times of COVID. And I think working with our partners really helped us understand that, and seeing it not as just a huge speed, mass sales game, but first proving the product and building kind of a brand in some way. That being said, now we're working more and more towards this kind of scale up process, but we were just kind of preemptively doing this. And the more and more I look back at my journey through Kuleana, that was kind of, one of our, it was a strength in some way because we were, dreaming kind of big, but it was also a weakness because we're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse. So yeah, I mean, long story short, I think YC really helped in that process and kind of brought us back into reality and where we really were. And it was a virtual cohort, which I think was really different, not only for all the participants, but also for the team and the partners at YC. So, we're sort of a guinea pig cohort, and I was really impressed just with how they handled it. Even on our demo day, there was just rolling blackouts of Zoom all over the country, and somehow they managed to keep the massive Zoom call, as the most people I've ever seen. I think it was over 2,000 at one point. Rolling really smoothly. So yeah, that was a great experience, and that just all in all, I could only recommend it to founders early stage, and even later stage companies have benefited. So I just can't speak from experience on that point. Um, but a great kind of program, and naturally, it also really helped on our financing, and our fundraising round. I know earlier on we were fundraising earlier this year, and it was quite difficult for us to get traction. I think part of that was caused by COVID. A part of that was also us not like running a tight fundraising process. And I think one of the greatest benefits of YC is it kind of equalizes the playing field for startups and investors, and it creates a really good structure around fundraising with a demo day, where you have just tons of investors interested in you, and you get some good leverage to kind of move the process a bit more quickly. And the YC team is incredibly helpful in this whole process. And it's just, I could go on and on about the benefits I got. I mean, there's also just the network is phenomenal. You get to meet some great people who are really really helpful and just open, often without any like expectation for anything in return. And yeah, I really do think it's it is the world class program for startups. And now I just got to experience it. So um, yeah, I can only give my hats off to them for all the help they've given us.
It sounds like quite a unique experience. And for any of the listeners out there who have a fantastic startup idea, we suggest applying for the program. What is it, twice a year at Jacek?
Yeah, they run 2 batches a year. I think it'll be virtual for a little bit, and sometimes people ask about that, and I think it's a little bit of pros and cons to it. One great thing is, it's easier now to apply to the program from anywhere in the world. You can work in places that don't cost as much to move to as living in San Francisco. And um, it's you can also focus on your startup quite a bit if you're based somewhere else. And that kind of helped us too. We could keep doing certain production processes and product development because we didn't have to completely relocate everything here. But it's also a little bit more tough, and I think YC will get better about this too, is just building community via virtual. And I think that might have been easier when there was in-house dinners, but we still have really great batchmates, and it's a work in progress. So
And to wrap up the call with our last question, what piece of advice would you give to people out there from the journey you've had thus far in life?
yeah, I think specifically for um, people wanting to start a company, or even if you're not starting a company, I think it's just um, it's a bit cliche, but I think it's really important to finding what kind of work gets you excited. I think sometimes we get overly excited on or overly focused on just do what makes you happy. And it's weird. It's not like when I was working on animal rights work early on that it just made me it wasn't this feeling of happiness. It was almost this feeling of like, oh, this is what I feel I need to do. um this is feeling what I should do. And it's weird. It doesn't necessarily feel like happiness. It's almost I've really been into stoicism lately, and they talk about these primary virtues. I think Marcus Aurelius coined quite a lot of them, and one of them is just it's kind of justice. And I don't know if it's something with justice that I felt, but in the end, it's that finding that kind of thing in your life can really, I just think it's super um, enabling to do great work, because you kind of get this extra wind in your sails. I've seen a lot of other people give advice on this when starting a company. It's got to be something you're a little crazy about, something you love, and because that's really hard, right? I mean, starting a company is really hard, but I think that goes beyond starting a company. I think that's also in living a full life is, what you end up doing as work, whatever you want to call it, your profession, it like really constitutes the majority of your life. So it's definitely not something anybody wants to settle on. You really want to find the stuff that excites us, even if it seems really difficult. And, I just think maybe sharing my story is useful in this. After I graduated, I had a master's in business, and I was just really, really set on working in this space. Applied to organization, the one I really wanted to get into, and I didn't land the job actually. And I was pretty dismayed at this, so I started looking at other jobs. And I actually I took some work from Craigslist. So it was construction work that I ended up doing for 6 months while delivering food on the side in Austin, Texas, blistering heat on my motorcycle. And I remember I think it was like the worst moment. I was on my motorcycle, I was driving and delivering this burrito across town. There's some guy, and I get to the door, I'm sweating like hell. I just like practically sped the whole way there, and I knock on the door and give the guy the burrito, opens the bag, kind of just looks disappointed and looks at me. He says, "Oh man, where's the special sauce?" And I think that was just like one of the lowest moments, just like, having an MBA rolled out of this, this awesome program, and then just kind of delivering food and being told off by some guy for not bringing him some special sauce. And, and the reason I was kind of doing this was because I was really waiting for the right opportunity to pop up. There was like a sales job that I looked at that was pretty safe. It would have got me a good, just like a decent salary, and I could have lived comfortably. And I remember I was in that interview, and I just like, it really felt sick to just take a job and just to pay the rent. And it kind of paid off. I ended up getting an offer to ProVeg, and I even started there as a federal volunteer. I was making almost no money. I think I was making $800 a month, right? And it was tough. And I was kind of in a fortunate position that I had some help from some friends, and I think a lot of people helped me because when people work in the animal rights space, they're just really motivated on the cause and the mission. And, with all that kind of help, now I got the awesome opportunity to found a company and to, go through YC. And we had a really successful fundraising round. And it is not an easy journey by any means, but I think it's so much more worthwhile, where I looked at this moment where I could have probably took that sales job and had something a little bit more safe. And I think often we're really conflicted with in life, this kind of push between, safety and doing something that really like excites you, right? Maybe that's the feeling. It's not necessarily even that something that makes you happy, but following that feeling of what really gives you energy and makes you come alive, even when it's not rational, even when the clear path isn't there. I don't think it's the easy route, but I think it pays off. And I would just really recommend people to do that. Because you only live once, right? I mean, it's cliche, but just do the thing that makes you feel alive.
Thank you for sharing that, Jacek, and for those deep thoughts. It truly goes to show that things in life happen for you and not to you. For people who are interested in reaching out to you, what would be the best point of contact?
Yeah, people can just find me on LinkedIn. That's always a great way to get in contact with me, or just email me directly, and it's just jacek@kuleana.co.
Jacek, it was a pleasure having you on Geeks of the Valley, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kunal.